What does this attack tell you about the situation Israel's in and what Israel needs to do?
Well, I think, Andrew, it tells me two things. Number one is that behind all the violence, hate, death, and destruction in the Middle East and what we're facing since the 7th of October, and actually before then, lies the Iranian regime. They are masterminding, they are financing, they are arming almost every terrorist organization, or every terrorist organization in the region, be it Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the militias in Syria, Iraq, even as far as Western Sahara. So wherever the Iranian regime has its nefarious arm pointed, there is going to be death and destruction and butchery. So the regime really has to go. And I believe that the civilized international community actually does understand that. The second thing I would take from this is that Iran really does not understand the Israeli resolve. Now, we are very divided, and as far as the Israeli government is concerned, I myself am certainly no fan of it, to use an understatement. And yet, when it comes to an issue like this, when it comes to the attack that we had on innocent people with almost 200 missiles raining down on us, we are in a consensus. And we are in full resolve. And the resilience is normal, and it's huge. And I can tell you that we are completely and utterly behind, all of us, completely and utterly behind the resolve of self-defense and the need to defend our population, our civilians, from attacks of this horror.
Have you any idea what Israel will now do? I mean, you know that Iran's been very close to finishing building its first nuclear bomb. Israel, after seeing what's happened in the last year, you can't have that threat just over the border, a little over the border. Do you think that's going to be a target?
Well, I can't and won't speak for the Netanyahu government, of course, which, as I said earlier, I'm not exactly in favor of. However, clearly there must be a response. There will be a response, and nobody thinks otherwise here at all. I think what's important, if you ask me what should happen, is that collateral damage on Iranian civilians should be limited to the minimum possible, and that the target must be the Iranian regime and the Iranian facilities, be it, well, I won't rule out nuclear ones, but there are other facilities as well. There are oil facilities of which Iranian economy is based. There are the government infrastructure there, et cetera, et cetera. So I won't really put a finger on it, basically, because I can't. I don't think anybody really, except for the powers that be who are commanding it in the military, and know what will happen and when. However, I would think that it's certainly uppermost in their minds to limit casualties on the Iranian population, which, as you know, is vehemently and overwhelmingly against the primitive and the medieval regime, which is occupying them. There's no other word to use.
Absolutely. I think the young of Iran are Israel's greatest allies in this war, and they cannot be turned against Israel by any misdirected reprisals. Look, you're familiar with Australia. There have been many calls from our government for Israel to de-escalate and to negotiate. So much criticism of Israel at the UN last week. It's just throughout the year. Can Israel, in fact, negotiate? And it's almost, by the way, no criticism of Iran, a couple of criticisms, but very few. Can Israel really negotiate peace with enemies like Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran, or negotiate without first firing back?
Well, I want to make 2 points here. Perhaps the second you may not agree with, Andrew, but I think that as far as negotiating with terrorist entities like Hamas and Hezbollah, it's a little bit like negotiating with ISIS or Al-Qaeda. What do you negotiate about? They are dedicated 100% to this destruction of the state of Israel. So what are we supposed to negotiate with them over? The speed of our destruction, the method of our destruction? So clearly with these type of fanatical terrorist Islamist, rather than Islamist killers, there's not anything to negotiate about. And I put aside for a moment the only issue that we really should come to an agreement with, which is over the hostage issue, which they are still holding 101 innocent Israelis in tunnels and caves and under the awful conditions. And so as far as the Hamas and the Hezbollah and the other terrorists are concerned, there's nothing to negotiate about. However, I do think, and here, as I said, you may not agree, I do think that we need to put some form of political horizon on the agenda. Not only Israel, I think the international community and the moderate Arab world. And that is because despite the fact that military force has to be used in circumstances like we are in, facing such horror and butchery in our neighboring surroundings, I think that force alone may not win the day. No. And we have to address the ultimate threat, which is Iran. And the way to do that is to forge an alliance, a regional alliance with the forward-looking Arab countries against Iran's proxies, which have to be destroyed, but also to work together to bring the Iranian regime to its knees. And that needs to be done through some sort of
you're not going to. I don't know why you think I would disagree with that. I'm absolutely on board. And in fact, as you know, the Hamas attack on Israel was just on the brink of Israel forging a historic relationship with Saudi Arabia. And I think this is the way to go. But you can only do it from a position
of strength. I'm glad to hear that. I didn't say you will not. I said you may not. And I'm glad to hear that we're in agreement on that one as well.
No, totally agree with you. Mark Sofer, always great to catch up with you. Thank you so much for your time.